Hello, and welcome to the second instalment of our three-part series of The Colour of Wine. My name is Mandy, and I'm the Bayman Hospitality Wine Ambassador. And like in the first episode, I'm your host for this evening. I run a wine blogging platform called Come Wine With Me. My experience in the hospitality industry had me working closely with wine suppliers, and I find the world of wine to be fascinating, and I'm lucky enough to be working towards my WSET Level 3 qualification. This is the second part in the three-part series of The Colour of Wine by Bayman Hospitality. The next event is on the 30th of September, and if you missed the first one, you can rewatch it back on YouTube. This series is in partnership with the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and Night Timber, and it's now for us to explore wine from a different perspective, talking today to our diverse panelist of wine experts. In terms of formatting and housekeeping, we'll keep the first half an hour as a panel discussion with our amazing panelists. We'll then move on to a wine pairing, followed by questions. Feel free to use the chat box on the right-hand side throughout to ask questions, and we'll put them to the panel at the end. Now, I'll take you over to our lovely panelists to introduce themselves. Audrey, would you like to go first?
Yes, sure. Hello, I'm Audrey. I work at an independent restaurant in London called Lawn. I'm a sommelier there and work there as front of house. I'm also studying to complete my Level 4 diploma in wine with the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. I am also a sometime event host.
Thank you. Sounds awesome. Anushka, over to you.
Hi there, I'm Anushka Matthews. So I work in sales. I look after the South London area for Liberty Wines. I also run a online and in-person events platform called Sweet Spice Wines, and it's a people of colour run events platform. And Audrey has been a host on my events before. So, and yeah, I think that is everything because I don't want to say too much for later.
Great. Tanisha, over to you.
Hello, I'm Tanisha. I am a wine educator. I teach wine courses at a university. I also create online content for wineries, wine brands. I host a podcast called Wine School Dropout. And yeah, I think that's it. That's me.
Thank you. And Nada, over to you.
Hello, my name is Nada. I'm currently working as the wine ambassador for Caned Holdings. So we're a group of restaurants within Glasgow. We're all different venues. Everyone has its own identity, and I champion wine for all the venues. I'm also in charge of training, and I'm currently working towards my Level 3 for WSET.
Thank you. Awesome. So thanks, guys, for introducing yourself. As mentioned before, I'm going to go into some questions, and I'm going to put a question to all of you, but I'm going to go with Anushka first. What was your path into the wine industry?
So my path was, I didn't have much of a previous experience with wine at all. So my first access to wine was through a job I was working as a waitress at the River Cafe. Their wine list was all Italian, and that was where the love for wine was sparked. And then from there, I applied for an apprenticeship at Liberty Wines. So they do this 2-year apprenticeship where you work in every area of the business. It's really intense. It's pretty full on. You work in sales, marketing, shipping, warehouse, and you also do 2 vintages. So you do an old world vintage and a new world vintage, and you also complete your diploma within that time. So it's pretty intense, but you get this amazing 360 view of the wine industry. And after I finished my 2-year apprenticeship at Liberty, I then went into sales. I realized that sales was my favorite part of the job. And yeah, I just gained a real passion for sales through the apprenticeship. And that's what brought me to wine, to the whole journey, basically.
Nice. Audrey, what about you? What was your pathway into the industry?
See, it was actually through beer that I came to know wine, that I'd gotten a job as head of wine and beer for a retail branch for a company. So, of course, wine was a part of the job. So through there, I started to do my WSET Level 2, Level 3, and I just got taken away, really, by wine. It's really interesting, and there's so many facets to it. So I began to explore that, met a few sommeliers at tastings and was captivated and charmed and thought, maybe I should go towards this way. So I started to look for roles as a sommelier in restaurants. I was doing my Level 4. And so, yeah, that's it. That's what led me there. A love of beer.
Nice. Tanisha, how did you get into the wine industry?
I am to the wine industry. I was actually working in IT at the time and was in grad school, went to a wine fair, became fascinated with wine.
Oh, I think we're having slight connection issues there.
WSET level 2 out of that. And I finished, I was introduced to a gentleman. Uh-oh.
Sorry, Tanisha, we're having slight connection issues. I'm going to go to Nada and we'll come back to you. Nada, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello, hi.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so sorry about that.
That's okay. My pathway into wine again started just by working as a waitress on the floor, and it was kind of my first experience of a SOM team. Never met a SOM. I didn't know that could be a job that you could do. And then I started working there. The more staff trainings I went to, the more wine events, the more wine clubs I started going into, the more I realized that I really did have a passion for this, and I found it really exciting, and it was something that I didn't actually mind studying for. So I always thought that's how you know it's a win, right?
Yeah, I feel the same doing my level 3. I actually look forward to opening the book. So, can you hear me? I'm just going to go back to you to finish off your answer.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Am I okay?
Cool. Okay. So, yeah, do you want to start again?
Yes. So, got interested in wine after I attended a wine fair. And from there, I took WSET level 2. And I was introduced to a gentleman who worked in wine marketing. He said, well, you should come work with me. I think you'd really like it. So I did that, worked with him, doing some wine marketing work. And then from there, as his business grew, I was able to kind of grow with him and do training courses and train staff and speak at festivals. And then all of that rolled in, and then it got me to where I am today.
Amazing. Awesome. So you've all come in completely different ways, which is great. So I'm going to ask Nada this question next. Were you a wine drinker previously to pursuing it as a career?
No, not really.
What did you drink?
I probably drank, we're talking like Blossom Hill rosé, like Tesco's cheapest rosé, anyone's cheapest rosé. I was like, yeah, that's fine, that'll do. But it was honestly since I had, I started working in the fine dining industry, you have to know your products. And that's also part of the reason how I got into it. It's just learning about it. I became interested, but no, I didn't know anything about it beforehand. Nope, nothing.
Yeah, I'm similar background. What about you, Anishka? You were nodding along with the Tesco cheapest rosé comment.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to own up to some of these things. Yeah, there was definitely a stage of Blossom Hill rosé. I was a big beer drinker. I used to drink quite a lot of beer, and I didn't really get into wine at all. I didn't really know anything about wine or that it could be a viable job. It was only just, like I said before, with the people around me, the sommeliers at the River Cafe, who started, I started talking a little bit about wine and getting a few notes, and they were like, oh, that's actually quite good. And I was like, oh, maybe it is. And then started to get into it slowly through that way. But before then, yeah, wasn't into any wine before.
What about yourself, Audrey? You said you came into it through beer. What got you into wine?
It's an interesting thing because with beer, there's a lot of kind of collaboration. So sometimes they use grape skins in some brewing, or they might use barrels for maturation. So it's been on the periphery, but I didn't actually get very much into it until I started working with it. So for me, it was more kind of beer a majority of the time. Then I realized, oh, there are things that kind of... So if you have hop varietals from the Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere, their characteristics will be based on kind of where they're from, and you can map that onto grapes as well. And I'm like, there's a connection here. I can understand this. So, but yeah, and wine is delicious. So I just started to drink some barrel fermented beers that had vinous influences, and just went that way. More kind of, I drank a lot of kind of pet nats initially. So yes, that started the journey.
Nice. What about you, Tanisha? Did you drink wine before pursuing it as a career?
I'm not sure you can call what I was doing wine drinking or like anything kind of serious. There was a wine that I drank, but I don't know if you could really consider that. But I was mostly into spirits before, and then wine just kind of came up. because I went to that one wine event and then I became completely fascinated and moved into it.
Yeah, it can captivate you like that, can't it? So, keeping on the theme of being in the industry and being captivated by it, and I'll stay with you, Tanisha. What have you enjoyed about the wine industry so far?
What I love most about it is the people that I meet, the different people that I come in contact with, and then seeing the light bulb when they finally understand, like, oh, Bordeaux is not a grape, it is a region, and then these grapes are a part of Bordeaux. I really, really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I know, learning about it just fascinates me how skewed my knowledge was. Audrey, what about you? What do you enjoy about the wine industry?
It's really, really dynamic. And when you're working on a restaurant floor, you can actually palpably see what wine can contribute to someone's meal, everyone's gathering, enjoying the wine. And then also when you meet kind of people who are winemakers, they have touched the soil. They've cultivated the grapes from them being very tiny buds, and they've had to kind of guide them through to being wine in someone's glass. And you get to kind of explore the beginning to the end all in one bottle. And I think it's amazing to see.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that it's a journey you learn about. Nada, what about yourself? What do you enjoy about the industry?
I think for me, I'm always learning. There's never a point where I think, oh no, this is it, I've learned everything. Like, you learn something new every day. You have to constantly kind of realize what people are looking for. So for example, like 4 or 5 years ago, no one really cared about wines being veggie or vegan, and now people really do. And I enjoy kind of following the trends with people and seeing what they want and what they're looking for, and trying to really accommodate that with being on the floor, and also try to kind of make my mark a little bit with it. And that's why I enjoy. It's like, this is something I can actually influence on a restaurant floor. Like, I can pick a wine and it's there on a list and someone will buy it. Like, for me, that's quite magical.
You can't
get anything else like that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also about, trying to influence it in a good way. It's like, okay, cool. We know these big names in wine. Why don't we try and champion the little guy for a little while? Why don't we try to open up the door to those people? So that's what I really enjoy. It's A, you get to learn something new every day. You're never bored. And B, just kind of moving with the flow of the wine drinkers and seeing what they're after and what they're going through and what they're trying to get from their glass of wine.
Yeah, totally get that. And Nishka, what about yourself? What have you enjoyed about the industry so far?
Well, definitely the things that everyone's touched on already. So definitely the social aspect, the intricacies of learning about, the chemistry behind winemaking or the soil types. But what I also really like is challenging people. I think you kind of touched it with one another. When somebody says they don't like something, or when somebody says they don't like wine at all, I love the idea of being able to communicate something new to somebody and broaden their horizons a little bit, because I think often people have set ideas of what they like and what they don't like, and it's always really satisfying when you can change people's mind and get them into wine or get them to a wine they wouldn't normally go for.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I recently got a friend on a weekend into Chenin Blanc because I thought it was a great summer wine, and she's loved it. Okay, I'm going to move on, and this is really why we're here. And I'm going to go to you, Nada. Can you describe any obstacles you've encountered that have been race or ethnicity related in the industry?
For sure. So I'm Egyptian by origin. I was born in Cairo, but I grew up in Scotland, so I now speak English with a Scottish accent, which means that as soon as I walk into any tasting, everyone just assumes that I'm there to get steaming drunk. Right? No one seems to take me seriously sometimes, and I never know if it's because of age, being a girl, being brown. I don't know if it's any of those, but I do find myself in any sort of wine tasting room where you have these giant wine tastings, and it's usually a supplier, they hundreds and hundreds of wine and loads of people. I find myself getting questioned all the time. I find myself almost getting tested. And sometimes people can't quite believe that I got the same invitation that they did and we're in the same room. That can be quite challenging sometimes. I feel like, I have to prove myself before I get to the actual wine tasting, which is what I'm there for.
Yeah, I feel like I've been in similar situations. Audrey, same question to you, really.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a bit bizarre. Sometimes you think, are you imagining it or is it true? But when other people see it, say I went to a tasting and I was with a group of my colleagues, go over to the tasting table, the person serving wine, it's not as if people are bustling to get in to have a sample of this wine poured. It's not that the gentleman didn't poured me a small sample of wine. He didn't pour me any wine at all. And my colleagues were just like, they said, she's with us. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And I was just like, when your colleagues are just like, oh my gosh, Audrey, I'm like, what can I say? But
yeah,
these things happen, or just people being taken aback that you know anything about wine at all. It's like, I'm like, yes, why not me? Wine is something that you have to learn about. It's not inherent knowledge that you're just born with. You have to learn about it. But yeah, it's things like that can sometimes get on my nerves. But people are getting used to me now, so
yeah, no, I get that. It's you're visible to your colleagues, but you're not visible to the outsiders and the suppliers and all coming in. And it's highlighted when it's highlighted to your colleagues when you're with these other people or at giant tastings and things like that. Tanisha, what about yourself?
Some of the same things that everyone has said, being passed over, being overlooked, not being taken seriously. I feel like most of the time I have to lead with my qualifications and certifications. It's not just, hello, I'm Tanisha. It's, hello, I'm Tanisha. I have level 3. I have a CSS. I have this. I have that. I do this. And that kind of thing. That is what I get most often. I've had a couple of weird comments where they didn't think I understood or they didn't think I heard it.
Yeah. What about yourself, Nada? Sorry, Anushka.
Yeah, again, some of the similar things. I think in my workplaces that I've worked in, I've had a really supportive employees and colleagues and things like that. But in terms of again, being in the wider world of tastings, and again, my customers who know me quite well, I've never really had too much of those kind of issues. But yeah, it's more at tastings when people don't know you so well. There are times where I've been told something about wine that's incorrect, and I knew it was incorrect. And there were, somebody much older than me who wanted to tell me something about wine, which, I knew that wine very well, and what they were telling me wasn't actually correct. And sometimes feeling not being totally being, I think maybe sometimes it's to do with being a woman sometimes, or being young, but not taken totally seriously at times. But I guess that's one of the things that, we just got to keep continuing to motivate ourselves and believe in, that we know what we're talking about.
So that really nicely leads me on to the next question, which is, what would you like to see change in the sector? And Tanisha, I'm going to start with you.
I think the thing I would like to see change the most is I would like to see more people that look like us in executive or in higher level positions. It's great that we're on the floor. It's great that we're doing that. But I would really like to see us as, directors and CEOs, CFOs, executives in the industry.
Yeah, wouldn't you love a board to look just like this screen right now of a big wine supplier?
I
would be so comfortable walking into that situation if that was me and I was, selling or doing whatever to a panel like this. It would, it'd make me so happy. Anushka, I'm going to put the same question to you. What would you like to see change in the sector?
I think what Tanisha said, definitely. And also I think the priorities of how we market wine to our consumers as well. So I think if more wine, just only wine companies, but also wineries could think about more about the consumer and who's drinking their wines and appealing to a larger, more diverse consumer base. I think that would make a difference as well, a huge difference for the future. I think that seeing more people drinking wine, people that look like you drinking wine, makes a huge difference. So just in terms of marketing, looking at websites and seeing Instagram photos on certain wine profiles, seeing the same kind of people drinking wine, I think the image of wine for consumers, I think, is really important, as well as in the industry as well. But
yeah, I totally agree. Audrey, over to you. We seem to have lost Nada, but I'm sure she'll be back shortly.
I think the change is already underway. You've got BAME in hospitality, you've got BAME wine professionals as well. So in terms of actually presenting a more kind of diverse face of wine, but even I think some of the barriers are that a lot of the time you don't even realize that wine is something you can work in the wine industry. That's something that you can actually do, and being able to find the information easily as well. I was asking sommeliers, asking these people, that people, like going online, and then it was just, I think it could be a bit easier, but I think representation is the first step, and I think that is starting to happen. We're doing this today, so people know that we exist. that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the start of, hopefully things like this shouldn't need to exist in 4 or 5 years. That'll put me out of the job as wine ambassador for Bayman Hospitality, but that's the end goal, to not have this role. So Nada, welcome back. I just want to ask you that same question, and I'll repeat it. But what changes would you like to see in the sector?
I honestly would like to see more food and wine pairings with more international food, more international flavors. I don't want it to be the case of, you're having a curry and someone tells you, "I'll just have a beer instead," because you're not going to find a wine that's going to go with it. I think there's a wine for every occasion. There's a wine for every flavor. There's a wine for every dish. And I think we just need to expand our tasting vocabulary a little bit more to include all these wonderful flavors. And I think we'll end up with a much kind of more varied, more varied dinners, at the very least.
Yeah, and I think it'll bring wine to a wider market, and that's only going to increase and help the industry grow as well when you're doing that. So that really brings me nicely on to how do we support the next generation of minority groups getting into wine? What are the steps that the industry needs to take, us as individuals need to take, big wine companies need to take? What do we do? And Tanisha, I'm going to pose that question to you first, especially as you are an educator. So you're teaching that next generation coming through.
A big thing for me, for the next generation, is them just knowing what is possible. So students walking into the classroom and seeing me there as the professor, that is something that makes a big difference to them. For people to be able to watch us and hear us talk about our different experiences and what we're doing in the industry, that is something to go forward. Being conscious of when we're out at tastings or when we're out places and maybe we see someone who is kind of standing off to the side who doesn't want to engage, trying to talk to them, engage them, whether you want to be a mentor or not, even if you're just friendly with someone who looks like you when you see them at an event. I think all of those are things that are good to do to start and to lift them up.
Yeah, totally agree. Anishka, same question to you.
Hi. Yeah, again, I think definitely the mentorship schemes would be really, really good. I think we're the kind of generation that's going to be kicking down some doors, hopefully, and creating a lot more representation. So hopefully by the time the next generation comes along, there's going to be more faces and more role models and more people to look up to and aspire to, hopefully. But I think something like education is really important in terms of accessibility as well. So how are we able to get more people of more diverse backgrounds into education to have that, to have those qualifications to get a better job in the industry? But I think also as well with the consumer base as well is slightly more diverse as well. I think those options and some of the things that the challenges we're talking about now hopefully won't be quite as strong.
Yeah. Nada, what about yourself? How do you see the next generation? How do we support the next generation?
I think we need to have a lot more scholarships, a lot more apprenticeships. You know, we have to recognize that sometimes like money things are why people, like money reasons are where people are not getting into this industry. It, from an outside kind of point of view, it does seem very elitist. And I think we just need to break down that barrier a little bit more and help encourage them into the industry and make sure that there's plenty of visibility.
Yeah, totally agree. Audrey, what do you think are the steps of supporting the next generation of minority ethnic groups into it?
I think everyone has mentioned things like mentorship programs, and there's a few kind of bursaries and scholarships and things that I think are currently in the pipeline. But I think one thing we have to take into account is that we are not in control of how we are received when we walk into environments where we are the minority. So if you can get the people who are the majority to kind of be more welcoming and be willing to mentor people who don't necessarily look like them or come from a particular background, I think that is a very good step. Or even I think things like there are some people who have a large following, like sharing of platforms, things like that, just exchanging of knowledge. I think there's a lot of kind of collaboration going on as well, because we potentially have a global audience. So I think it's starting. So I think it's going to be different. I think we're starting to make the changes. So as Anushka said, we're kicking down doors. It's us who's going to do it. So we have begun.
I think it's really interesting that you say mentors that don't look like you. And I think you almost need two mentors. You need that older siblings type mentor who's had a similar, maybe from a similar background or similar ethnic group from you, or faced similar challenges. But you also need the other type of mentor, who they've got to a senior position and they know what to do and they've got that experience. You need to learn from that experience. They've maybe not had the same challenges as you faced in the industry, but they know how to help get you to those positions. And I think that's something really key going forward. Great. So next question, and will be the last question. Obviously, 2020 has been a bit of a crazy year, to say the least. But how do you see the industry, not just from a diversity perspective, but in general, how do you see the industry evolving? And Nada, I'll put that question to you first, if you don't mind.
This is probably the toughest question. In an ideal world, in my daydreams, I just see everyone working together to really provide, from WACT, we need more tasting notes that kind of contain and have a lot more colorful vocabulary, really. Like we need things that describe flavors from all over the world and not just kind of a European side of things. I just want to see more girls that look like me in the industry, and I want to see them as execs, and I want to see them as CEOs, and that's kind of where I see it. In terms of wine itself, I see people, especially consumers, taking a lot more care about what's in their glass, where it's come from, who's made it, and I really see that kind of people really caring a lot more about what's happening in the glass.
Yeah, definitely. Audrey, I'll pose the same question to you. How do you see the future of the industry evolving?
See, it's really a tough one, but evolution, like things evolving, is inevitable. But what I'd say, I know it will sound not threatening, but if an area doesn't evolve with its consumer base, because there are a lot of people who look like me who are interested in wine and they just don't know what avenue to follow, but I'm here so they can come with me and join me on my journey. But if you don't evolve with your consumer base, we live in a time of infinite substitutions. People just choose to drink something else. Because if you look at how brands like Guinness are doing their marketing, or even spirit brands, they have a very diverse group of ambassadors who are telling people that, oh, you're welcome in this space, come and drink this, come and drink that, and instead come with us, education, so on and so forth. But also I think the internet has already proved itself to be such a spectacular resource during COVID-19. And I think it really will bring like wine and I think beverages overall to a broader audience, because you can sit at home and you can engage with people all around the world on the subject of wine. They don't have to leave their chair. The wine can just be delivered within the space of like 3 to 5 days. So, I think better usage of the internet, more kind of diverse brand ambassadors, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as lockdown did, help me through learning for my WESET course, when wine was delivered within 24 hours because I was living in London. Anishka, what about you? How do you see the future of the industry evolving? I mean, I guess you're on the floor with the sales team, with the suppliers. How is it affecting you now, and what are you guys doing going forward?
Well, I think COVID-19, the lockdown, and all the challenges we faced has shown how adaptable we can be as an industry. Obviously, there's been some real struggles, and it hasn't been easy, but it has been really amazing seeing how people have been able to adapt to the changes and make sure everybody gets wine, basically. I think it's one thing that has definitely been shown is that people need wine. And so that's definitely true. And there's just been so many different ways of doing that, like you said, with the online tastings, deliveries, things like that, new measures to make people feel safe eating out. But I think as well, the time that people have had at home, less of the distractions of everyday pre-COVID life, has made people think a lot about who they're supporting when they're buying wines. I think within all different industries, but within wine especially. And so I think all of these things present really positive opportunities for the future. And I think that we've shown, so much growth already. The industry has shown growth, and I'm on a positive vibe, thinking that this growth is going to continue, and we'll continue adapting, and I think we'll continue creating more opportunities for diversity as well.
Great. No, I love that positive spin, that the future is bright.
Yeah.
Tanisha, what about yourself? What's the future of the industry? And you're not even in the UK, you're in France, right? So
Yes.
How are things changing there? How are things looking there for the future?
The future here, I think, is a more educated consumer, as people now are, well, not right now, but people were traveling more, and people were out in wine regions and traveling to those. And with wineries and winemakers seeing people who look like us travel there, then they understand a little better that, okay, well, maybe we do need to be diverse. Maybe this is a community that we need to reach out to and we need to embrace. So I definitely see the wine tourism sector, when people can travel again, I see that changing a lot. And consumers are just a little more informed now. Consumers are able to do things like this. There are plenty of online virtual tastings. Consumers can buy wine online and have it delivered directly to their door. They can travel somewhere by watching videos on YouTube and reading specific wine magazines and things like that. So I think these changes are happening now. And, in the future, I think we'll be able to see some of the results of a lot of the things that are happening right now.
Awesome. Nada, welcome back. I know we're having a few tech issues. So we're still on our question. It's our last question before we move on to pairing. How do you see the future of the industry evolving?
I honestly see in terms of for me personally, that's all I can talk about. That's all I know. Just from being on the floor and from doing some shifts at the weekend, people just, they're much more receptive to finding out where the wine is made and where it's come from and about the winemaker, and they love hearing all these stories. And I think it's because they have had to make their own choices a lot of the time during lockdown, that they've had to become more informed. So it's actually benefited them when they've come out for dinner to make better choices regarding their wine. And I'm really seeing that on the floor. And I think I'm going to see a lot more of that in the future, definitely.
That's really refreshing to hear, actually. So we are done with the questions from the panel, or for the panel. But if you have any questions, please write them in the comments box. And after we go through the pairing, we will pose them to the panel. So we're now going to talk about the wine that, thanks to our sponsor, Nightimber, that we've got. I don't know if you can see that. This is a Cuvée Cherie Demi-Sec. Each of our panelists are hopefully drinking it, because I've nearly done with the bottle myself during this 36 minutes I've been here. But they're going to talk about pairing it with a favorite dish that's either means a lot to them, is from their cultural heritage, etc. So Tanisha, I'm going to start with you. What dish did you choose to pair this with?
So this was tough for me because I was just trying to think of a cultural dish, something that I really, enjoy. So I paired it with something I actually miss because I get all the ingredients here. With this wine being having a little more residual sugar in it and being very fruit forward, very like peachy, apricot, that kind of thing, I went with a dessert, and I would pair this with peach cobbler. Ooh. And so I miss peach cobbler and other soul food type items so much. And my aunt used to make an amazing peach cobbler. And so I'm thinking with the peaches, with the cinnamon, the nutmeg, it's a little bit of acidity in this wine. So I think that would pair nicely with the peaches, and then with the peach flavor in the wine, and then also in the cobbler. I think that would be amazing together.
No, have we got any kind of like side or ice cream or cream or?
Oh, ice cream. Yeah, because peach cobbler needs to be warm, then a little ice cream on top. I might drizzle a little caramel on it too, but that's a whole lot of calories. But it's a cheat day. It's fine.
That sounds incredible. That sounds right up my street. Audrey, what about you? What would you be pairing this with?
See, my mother and I have started to have, like, if I'm free on a Sunday, I'll go around and we're making some Ghanaian food together, because that's my heritage. So I've been taking wines over to match with traditional Ghanaian food. So last Sunday, just gone, we made chicken light soup. The main kind of components in the dish, you have your meat that's chicken, but then you have Scotch bonnets, you have garlic, you have onion, you have ginger, and you boil it all into a soup, of course, and blend it so it's quite a smooth, spicy, fragrant soup containing chicken. But then it's served with fufu, which is like either pounded yam, cassava, pounded plantain. You can make it out of many, many different things. But I'll just say that if you are going to match it with a wine, fluted glass, you will either have to use a spoon, sacrilege. I know if there's any Ghanaians listening, apologies, or you can just have a napkin at your side while you're enjoying your drink and your fufu. Initially, I thought that if you have something quite distinctive like Scotch bonnets, it might potentially overpower a sparkling wine, but because this has residual sugar, high acidity, it really cut through the more kind of distinctive elements of the dish. And also the wine, as I was eating and drinking more, it became more tropical in its characteristics. So that was a really delightful pairing, but it would also go very well with a dish called Red that consists of like a stew that's based around tomatoes, some tinned fish, again, Scotch bonnets, a recurring theme, and it's served with fried plantain. But then again, you have to make sure that your plantain is kind of not very overripe, because then it's very sweet. You need to go for plantain that's still quite firm, and that's a good match. Also cuts through some of the textural elements of palm oil. So yes, those are my matches.
That again sounds delicious, and I love the flavour of Scotch bonnet. So I might be cracking open another bottle on the weekend while I do something similar. Nada, what about you? What would you be pairing this with? Oh, I think we might be having a few technical difficulties with Nada, so I'm going to go move over to Anishka until Nada's sorted. Anishka, what would you be pairing this with?
So I'm half Mauritian, but I actually didn't grow up with anyone Mauritian. So I've only started to learn about Mauritian cooking and culture quite recently. I went to Mauritius once and tasted some amazing food, and recently with lockdown, I've been trying to start to cook and learn a bit more about the Creole cooking. So I decided to pair this. It was actually two. There's a two-part to this dish. So the first thing I thought would be really nice is something called gâteau piment, and it's basically these little fried, almost like falafel, fried balls that are made out of yellow split peas, and it's got chili and spring onion and cumin and coriander. And I thought, just because the acidity on it and the spice with the residual sugar, I thought would go really nicely as a nice little kind of starter. These little fried balls, they're really tasty. And then another thing that I've been learning to cook is a Creole dish called prawn rougaille. So it's prawns, and it's a French Mauritian kind of fusion, I guess. So it's got things like it's a tomato base with prawns, but it has thyme, it has coriander, it has ginger, it has chili, and a little bit of cumin. So it's quite fragrant. And I thought that I quite like it quite spicy as well. But so the residual sugar I thought would work quite nice with the spice. And the fragrance in the wine as well. I think it's got this beautiful fragrance. I think would work really well with the ginger and the other spices in the wine. And again, I think texturally as well, with the acidity, with the seafood prawns, I think, yeah, I thought that would be a really, really lovely match.
That sounds absolutely amazing and absolutely delicious. And I always regret having my dinner before this because I feel like I end this session a bit hungry. Nada, over to you. What would you be pairing with this dish? And hopefully you can hear me and I can hear you now. Oh, no, I think we're still having a few issues with hearing Nada. So whilst we sort out Nada's technical issues, I'm going to ask if you have any questions, can you please put them in the comments box, and then someone will share it with me shortly because I can't see your comments, but we do have a lovely technical lady who is doing all the hard work while we just sit here and drink wine and have a chat, which is lovely. First question's coming in. English wine, which we are currently drinking, seems to be getting more and more popular. How do you feel it compares to the classic French, Italian, Spanish sparkling wine? Oh, they've just put Spanish wines, but I'm going to throw in the word sparkling. Tanisha, being in France, I'd love to know your opinion on this first.
I knew I was probably going to be the one that you asked about that first. So, comparatively speaking, it is good. This is the first time I've had this one from Nine Timber. I've heard about it a lot, so I was very excited to try it. Of course, I am still gonna stand for French sparkling wine, champagne or Cremant or Blanquette or things like that, just because they've been doing it like since the beginning of time. But that doesn't mean other people can't do it and other people can't do it well. I enjoy Italian sparkling. I enjoy Franciacorta. I enjoy Cava. But yeah, of course, I got to always go with champagne first. But Nine Timber is a very close second.
Audrey, as some on the floor, how do you feel that English sparkling wine? Do you, I read a lot about wine. I talk a lot about wine. I visit lots of English vineyards. In my head, English sparkling wine's then like the next best thing. But I'm not on the floor talking to consumers. Are the day-to-day consumer, are they into it? Are they ordering it? Are they enjoying it?
Yeah, we had Coates and Seeley do a sparkling rosé wine, and it's quite popular. But I really, really love the Nightingale. I think I actually have to stock up. I think it's going to be an ideal match with a lot of spicier dishes. But I think one of the things is comparisons. I know it's good to have them so you know what to expect, but things are just different, And I think it's the differences that make them special. So I think realistically, it's not about comparison. I think wines from all regions, if they're sparkling, they all have something to offer. You need to find the thing you love about them and focus on that. Don't compare them.
Yeah,
because you can't really kind of compare with you've got champagne, the like history, the legacy there. It's just kind of you can't challenge that.
I totally agree. And whilst I know we are being sponsored by Night Timber and this is absolutely delicious, I absolutely love the Coates and Seeley sparkling rosé.
Yeah,
it goes down too easy. Anishka, for you, are your clients buying English wine? Are they buying it and seeing its uptake against French, Italian, Spanish wines?
Yeah, so I think 100%. I think when I first started, right at the beginning, early in the earlier days of English wine, I think it was still finding its identity. And I think what Audrey was saying, every region or every country, when you talk about Italian wines, obviously in terms of sparkling wines, you have different regions. You've got Franciacorta, you've got Prosecco, which are totally different, very, very different, and have the completely different identities. And I think in the UK and English sparkling wine, English still wine as well, actually, it's found its identity, and I think people are really, really into it. Nightingale is fantastic. Nightingale was one of the very first English sparkling wine that I ever tried, the Brut, the original one. But yeah, I think we've definitely found our identity. We've definitely identified our soils, our regions, and what works well here. And yeah, I think there's definitely been a huge difference. And also people wanted to buy things locally and wanting to know exactly where their wine's coming from. You can see exactly where your English sparkling wine's coming from. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big champion for English sparkling wine, so I completely agree. We've got another question in because Nada, I think, is having connectivity issues, so we'll go to the next question. Quite a bit of discussion on pairing diverse food with wine. How do we start this? Do BAME startups and restaurants really have the resource for sommelier? So how do we support it? How do we, as BAME people, for want of a better term, in the industry, support this? And Audrey, as a BAME sommelier, I'm going to go straight to you. Sorry.
Well, I think already it's kind of, you have restaurants that are inspired by West African ingredients like Ikoyi, and we have the upcoming Akoko that's William Chiller's project, which is also kind of West African inspired. So there, I think there's chosen a lot of wines that are specifically meant to match with the flavors that are being showcased in the food. But I think, this is a tough one. I think what you have to bear in mind is that people eat all different kinds of things with their wine. Just think that if you think of like the components of a dish, kind of just think of wines in terms of what's good for something that's aromatic, like ginger, what's good for mitigating spice. Like, I think with this demi-sec, something that has a bit of residual sweetness, its sweetness is almost kind of like you forget about its sweetness. It's almost mitigated by spice. Like almost that the spice adds something to the wine. You just have to keep an open mind and consider just consider that there are kind of people are eating other things with their wine, and just look to find out what they are, because I can guarantee there is someone somewhere who is doing food and wine pairings with foods from different backgrounds. I think Alicia Hansel is doing Spilling It is doing something along those lines as well. So the resources are there. You look
last week.
Yeah, just look and you shall find.
Awesome. Tanisha, I'm going to put you the same questions. How do we, and I don't know if this is an issue you're seeing in France. I'm not familiar with the French restaurant environment, but how do we kickstart BAME-led restaurants bringing in wine and pairing the wines appropriately that mass market would like it?
I think we might have to go a step down. And since all of us have online platforms and we all talk about wine, I think it's a matter of us doing the work and talking to consumers through our platforms and pairing. When we taste wine, we pair with diverse foods. And then I think when the consumer goes to a restaurant and then they can ask for it, they can request, oh, well, I know that this
so I think we're having a few connectivity issues.
Particular wine, they can do a request.
Yeah, we're having a few connectivity issues with Tanisha. Never work with dogs, children, and technology, apparently. So I'm going to move on to the next question. Sorry, Tanisha.
Not today.
I've cut you off in your pack, but yeah, I'll do the next question and I'll pose it to Anishka.
It's okay.
So this question is from Vivian. She says, I recently graduated with a master's degree in ethno-tourism. I'm passionate in food and wine pairing. Could you please suggest what career opportunities I can explore as an Asian?
So, I mean, for me, if your passion is food and wine pairing, then something like a sommelier would be the best kind of end goal in terms of opportunity, or is it for a career? Yeah, as a career. So, I mean, definitely doing WSET, working with WSET, because a lot of what you would learn through WSET as well would be a lot of food and wine pairing as well. But if you've got the master's degree in ennotourism, then I think being a sommelier would be a no-brainer in terms of food and wine pairing, because you have challenges every single day, different people having different ideas of what they like, and with tables tasting or tasting menus, there's just so much scope to get creative in that area. And you could work within the Asian restaurants if you wanted, or you could work with lots of restaurants that are doing fusion foods or combining lots of different ingredients together. Within London especially, there's so much scope for such amazing restaurants to do that.
Amazing, that's great. I might change my career. Audrey, any advice for Vivian?
Well, everyone who, like other sommeliers who I spoke to, they're just like, if you're going to go and work in a restaurant, you need to begin as a waiter. You need to kind of get a kind of feel of the restaurant, the room, decide whether you like it, because working front of house, you need to have a kind of a capacity for it. But then again, I think once you're in a restaurant environment, you learn more about the food, the components of dishes, how well to match them with, how well to match wines with food. So I think sommelier, definitely, but you might have to start as a waiter first and work your way up from there.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. We've done nearly an hour and we've got our last question, and I'm going to wrap things up. How successful is the wine industry in England? And what would you suggest to students who want to get into the industry? Where could they start? And I guess that feeds, nicely on from Vivian's question. Is she's already done her degree. So, Tanisha, as an educator, where do I start if I want to get into the wine industry? Are we having connectivity issues with Tanisha? Okay, well, Audrey, I'll go back to you until Tanisha's back in the game.
Well, again, being a waiter in restaurants, or even just working in a wine shop, if you're trying to especially kind of like increase your knowledge, it's a very good place to start. But also the Westside have a jobs board, so they have a lot of kind of jobs that are posted, or different companies post, that are intended for people who might be university leavers. So it's a good place to look if you're looking for your first foot in the door. And I think Liberty's internship program as well, which Anushka has, she's the success of the internship program, a good example. So, I think the applications have just opened, so you could give that a look potentially as well.
Oh, amazing. Anushka, as someone who's gone through the internship program, do you have any advice?
Well, you've already announced the apprenticeship scheme. I think that was an amazing experience. Obviously, there's not loads of those experiences, so I think what I've heard from other people as well, I think just getting yourself in front of as much wine as possible is definitely the best way. I think the more that you can learn, the more that you can taste, the better knowledge that you have within either restaurants or I think wine shops as well. Like Audrey said, I think wine shop is, I never worked in one, but I think that would be another really great route to starting in the wine industry. Just anywhere where you can really be tasting and getting to know the wines really well. But for me, obviously the restaurant side was really good. And what you were saying before about having mentors, I had an amazing mentor at the River Cafe. I've had quite a few mentors actually that didn't look like me, like we were saying before. But but in terms of, had progressed much further in their career. So if you meet somebody like that, who is willing to give you their time, like I did, I was really lucky to have people to give me their time, help me learn. Those people are really, really key as well. And there's so many different routes, and I think they're not really, at the moment, there isn't a really traditional route, but I think if you surround yourself with the right people and plenty of wine to taste, then yeah, you can get there.
Amazing. I'm going to sneak in one last question because we've got 5 minutes. And Tanisha, hopefully it will work. And this is a question that I find really close to my heart. Do brands have a major part to play for showing off diversity and for women in wine? So I guess diversity in the ethnicity sense, and as we're an all-female panel, just by coincidence, in the gender sense.
Absolutely. I'm not sure how much I need to expound on that, but absolutely. I think they need to show it in their marketing, because what better way for people to want to drink something or be somewhere than to see someone who looks like them? So I think they have a very major part to play to show that off.
Audrey, over to you.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it depends on the sector the brand is trying to appeal to, because there's a lot of, especially very kind of prestige wine brands, you have a kind of very slim, pale lady on a beach drinking rosé or something, and you're just like, could I put myself in her shoes? No, probably not. No, I think it is important to, people like to see themselves, and I think you'd be lying if you say that you don't. And I think brands do have, they have the finances, they have the platform to do that, but they're not really. I think in terms of like rosé brands, I think it's Lafite du Rosé, which is kind of the first kind of very premium, like luxury campaign where you just see a lot of brown people chilling on a beach drinking rosé, and I'm like, oh, that could be me doing that. But I think it's very, very bizarre when you think we are in 2020 and it's like, it's only now that we're actually seeing ourselves in these things. It's not as if to say that brown people were just invented. We've been around for time immemorial. But I think the change just needs to be a bit quicker. People are drinking wine and would love to enjoy it more. But if it's presented as something that is kind of outside, people will just drink something else. And there's lots of other things to drink. So,
Yeah. I totally agree. I completely agree. I want to see a reflection of a version of myself in the marketing to purchase. Anishka, I'm going to ask you to answer that question, and then I'm going to wrap it all up. So we've got a minute and a half left. So if you can do 30 seconds, I'll wrap it up in a minute.
Okay, on the brands, yes, definitely a major part to play. I think also, not necessarily for people like us to see ourselves, but also I think for a younger generation who also are very, they really care about where their wines are coming from. They really care about what that brand represents. And a lot of more people in the younger generation really do care about diversity and representation as well, not necessarily being a brown person or a person of color. I think for their own interests as well. I think it's really, really important.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off there, but I need to say thank you to everyone for tuning in tonight. I've had such an amazing time talking to this wonderful group of ladies. A big shout out and thank you to our event partners of the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and Timber. Don't forget, we have the 3rd episode coming up on the 30th of September, 8 p.m. Again, 8 p.m. British time or British summer time. There will be a link from tomorrow on the Bayman Hospitality website, but also on my Instagram page and their Instagram page. I'm sure all the girls on this panel's Instagram page to sign up for the next session. I've got 9 seconds to go, so I will see you then. Thank you very much for tuning in. And it's been a pleasure as always. See you next Wednesday, and cheers.
Thank you and cheers.
Cheers.